Hello and welcome to BFS Wargaming. My name is Patrick and today we're looking at Warhammer 40k 9th edition core rules, and this video is on the psychic phase and the shooting phase. Okay, two very important damage phases. So without further ado, we'll get into it and we'll start with the psychic phase. Okay, so the psychic phase. So in Warhammer 40,000, you have certain units that have the Psyker keyword. So this Contorted Epitome is one of them such units. Now, all Psykers know the Psychic Power Smite. They can also know other ones specific to their faction, but Smite is what we're going to mainly talk about today. Now, Smite is the only power you can cast more than once in the same phase, but with a different Psyker. So what you have to do to cast a psychic power, you roll 2d6 and you have to get over what is called the warp charge value. So the warp charge value for Smite, for example, is 5+. So with 2d6, you need to get a 5+. Now, the range of Smite is 18 inches. So these Primaris Marines are well within range. And with Smite, you have to hit the closest visible enemy unit. So, for instance, if there was a unit that was closer, but behind some terrain and the Contorted Epitome couldn't see them, then the Contorted Epitome would have to smite the Primaris Marines because they are the closest visible unit. Okay, so 2d6, we need to get a 5+, and we got a 4. Now, a 3 and a 1. So this means that smite would not go off. Okay? Now let's say we did get it off, and we roll an 8. Okay, this means it does D3 mortal wounds. Now, how to roll D3 is you roll a D6, a 5 and a 6 is 3 mortal wounds, a 3 or a 4 is 2 mortal wounds, and a 1 or a 2 is 1 mortal wound. Okay, so this is 3 mortal wounds to done to the Primaris. The Primaris have 2 wounds each, so one of these Primaris would be dead and one would be down 1 wound. A mortal wound is a wound that you cannot have a save against. Okay, so there's no save against mortal wounds. With Smite, if you roll an 11+, it's D6 mortal wounds. So let's just say we got a 6 and a 5, that's an 11. Okay, so an 11+, you would do D6 mortal wounds. Now this is really big, so it can be. So you roll a D6 and I've got 4. So 4 mortal wounds, that would be 2 dead Primaris Marines. Okay, so obviously it's hard to get, but it is really good if you do get that 11+. And get them D6 mortal wounds. Also with Smite, if you have more than one Psyker, if you cast Smite on with the Contorted Epitome first, it's a 5+. But then every time in the same phase that you cast Smite, so like we said, Smite can be cast more than once per phase, it's the only power you can do that with, then the next time you cast it, you have to add 1 to it. So it was only a 5+ to get off here, then if Selesky casts it, it will then be a 6+, and then if you had a third Psyker, it would then be a 7+. And that doesn't matter whether it goes off or if it fails, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so now we're going to talk about denying the witch. Okay, so denying the witch is basically denying the psychic power. So if we go back to the Contorted Epitome, he is going to attempt to cast Smite, and the closest visible enemy unit is these Primaris Marines. So he needs a 5+ to get it off. He rolls a 3, which doesn't go off. So for this, I'm going to roll again and gets another 3. So let's say he got it off on a 7. Okay, he rolled a 6 and a 1. He got it off on a 7. Just can't keep rolling 3s all day. That's how my dice are. Okay, so it goes off on a 7. Now, this librarian here also has the psychic keyword and he can deny the witch. So he has to be within 24 inches to deny the witch. So he's well within range. And he is, to deny the psychic power, you need to roll over what the psychic test is. So this is 7, so he needs at least an 8 on 2d6 to stop the power working. So he had rolled a 7, so he also rolls a 7. So unfortunately, this means the power still goes off. So the D3 mortal wounds, for 3 mortal wounds, will have been done to the Primaris Marines. So with the deny the witch, you can only attempt to deny a power once. So for instance, again, if the Contorted Epitome manifested Smite, then the librarian can attempt to deny it. Okay, But if the librarian fails, like he did in our last demonstration, that means that this other psyker over here cannot then attempt to try and deny that same power. But what it can do is, say for instance, this cast smite, the librarian failed to deny it, then if we moved on to this psyker and they attempted to cast smite, then the other psyker can then attempt to deny that. Or if the librarian had two deny the witches, they could attempt to deny the second power. Okay, the shooting phase. So the shooting phase, what you do is you pick a unit. So for the purposes of this, I'll be picking the Primaris Marines over here, and they are going to be shooting at the Lich Guard. So you pick your unit, you select the target. You then roll. So I'm going to roll all of the dice at the same time. Now, these are auto bolt rifles, so they have a range of 24 inches. So I'm well within range with all of the models, and you have to be within range of every model. If, for instance, we had 3 that were in range and 2 that were out of range, only the 3 that were in range could shoot. But they are all in range, and their characteristic for that gun is Assault 3, which means that they get 3 shots each. So that will be, with 5 of them, a total of 15 shots. Now, the ballistic skill of the Primaris Marines is 3+. So that means I get to roll, for each one of them, I get to roll 3d6. And I have to, so what I'll do is I'll just roll for 1 to make it easy. I have to roll at least a 3 on each of these dice. So what happened? I rolled 2 3s and a 2. So that means the 2 missed. So you take the 2 away. Okay, so now I know that the strength of this gun is strength 4. And the Lich Guard are toughness 5. So because their toughness is more than the strength of the weapon, this means that I will be wounding on a 5+ on each of these d6s. So I roll them, so I get a 6 and a 2. So you take the 2 away, so that means I wounded these Lich Guard once. Okay, so the Lich Guard then get a saving throw. So their save is 3+. So that means on a d6, I roll, and I rolled a 6, which means they saved the wound. So there is no damage then done to these. Now obviously I only rolled for one of these Primaris Marines. They would have had 15 shots. So I'll roll the other 12 shots and see what we get. So in there we got 1, 2, 3 misses, which are 1s and 2s. So we take them away. All the rest were hits. Then we have to roll and try and get a 5+, because their toughness is higher. So I rolled and I got 3 out of 5+. Okay, so I've got 3 wounds go through. Then the Lich Guard are going to try and save. So they saved 1 because there is no armor penetration on this gun. So if there was armor penetration, for instance, if their armor penetration was -1, that means that the Lich Guard would have to then save on a 4+, because it modifies the roll. But yep, so 2 of them went through, so that means Lich Guard have 2 wounds, so that would be one of the Lich Guard destroyed and taken off the table. Now I'm going to put up a handy table on the screen which shows you basically how the strength and toughness works, the strength of the weapon, the toughness of the model, and what you would have to roll to wound. It's in the rule book. It's really handy, so take a look at that, because I'll talk about it now. So basically what happens is, if the strength of your weapon is double the toughness of the model you're shooting at, or unit you're shooting at, that means you only have to roll a 2 to wound. If the strength is greater than the toughness but not double, more than double, or double or more than, then you have to roll a 3 to wound. If the strength and the toughness is equal, then you have to roll a 4 to wound. If the toughness is greater than the strength of the weapon, then it is a 5 to wound, and if the toughness is double the strength of the weapon, then it is a 6 to wound. Okay, and you always wound on a 6. Okay, So if we'd shot with our Primaris Marines over here, we'd selected our target, we shot, we resolved those attacks. Then what you do is you move on to the next unit. So say as we had this repulsor over here. The repulsor's got multiple guns, a lot of guns actually. And what you have to do is you have to select the target for each gun. So say if there were multiple units, multiple enemy units, for instance his character was over here, or say it was closer, then he could choose to split some of the guns going into this Cryptek, some of the guns going into the Lich Guard. You then have to resolve them in the order, whichever order the person shooting wants to resolve, they resolve and then see what happens. So there's a couple of things I want to mention rules wise is with characters, if a character is within 3 inches of a friendly monster or vehicle, or a friendly unit of 3 or more models, then you cannot shoot that unless you have a very special weapon like a sniper rifle, okay? Which it will say on the characteristic of that weapon. So because this Cryptek is within 3 inches of these Lich Guard, this means that the repulsor can only target the Lich Guard with all of its guns. Even if it manages to kill some of these first, it cannot even say that it wants to target that Cryptek. Okay, so that's something that you have to look out for and be very careful when you're moving to make sure that your character is within 3 inches of either a friendly vehicle, a friendly monster, or a friendly unit of 3 or more. Okay, so for instance, if this repulsor targets the Lich Guard and kills 3 of them, and there's 2 left, that means these Primaris Marines, if they hadn't shot yet, could then target the character because there's only 2 models in the unit. So that's something to also be aware of. Okay, so a couple of things to mention. Firstly, if you take a Primaris Marine, he's got an auto bolt rifles, which means he gets 3 attacks. Now, I can't split those attacks between 2 units because it's just the one weapon. You can't split one weapon's attacks between 2 units. But for instance, with the repulsor, you can put one weapon into the Lich Guard and then another weapon into another unit. So just be aware of that. You can't, if you've got a weapon with a multiple amounts of attacks, the one weapon has to all go into the same unit. Okay, so if models are in engagement range, which means within 1 inch, this means that the models, the Primaris Marines, because they're in engagement range, they can't shoot their auto bolt rifles. Primaris Marines actually do have a pistol as well, which you can shoot in combat. Okay, but there's a lot of units in the game which only have their primary gun. They don't have a gun they can shoot in combat. So just beware of that. They cannot shoot their auto bolt rifles whilst they're in combat. Also, say for instance the Cryptek over here, he can't shoot his gun at the Primaris Marines because they are in combat and it would be too risky because he might shoot his own guys. Okay, so you can't shoot at a unit that is in combat. Now, however, if we go and take these Primaris Marines out and we move the repulsor forward and these Lich Guard are in combat with the repulsor. Now, because it's a vehicle, so vehicles or monsters can shoot at units that are within engagement range, so within that 1 inch. So this means that, but they have to shoot at a -1. Okay, so they're getting a penalty. So normally a repulsor would shoot at ballistic skill 3+. Okay, but because of these being, he would have to get a 4+ instead because they're basically too close and they're making it hard for the repulsor to be able to shoot at them. So you have just got to beware. Vehicles and monsters can still shoot whilst they're in combat. The other thing to note is that if the vehicle is in combat, it can choose to aim some of its weapons at the Lich Guard and then some of its weapons, for instance at the Cryptek, because it's out at 3 inches, it can aim its weapons at it. It has to resolve the shots against the Lich Guard first and then the guns, and if he doesn't kill the Lich Guard with the weapons that he aimed at it, the other weapons can't target the Cryptek and they're just lost. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. You're probably better off aiming all of your guns rather than risking losing some of your shots. So obviously when making a ranged attack, you need to have line of sight with most weapons. Okay, so you need to check whether you're in range. So all of these guys are in range, but none of these Primaris Marines can actually see the Cryptek, so they wouldn't be able to shoot at them because they can't see him. Okay, so if you were to take, for instance, the Repulsor could shoot because you can draw a line straight from the hull, or a part of the model, all the way to the Cryptek, so you can actually shoot. So now we're going to talk about AP, or armor penetration, and invulnerable saves. So if we take the Repulsor Executioner, he's going to shoot his big gun, so the heavy laser destroyer, at the Cryptek. So he moved, so he's going to get 2 shots. Now he hits on a 3+, so he hits once and misses with the 1. He's then going to wound, and it's strength 10, and the Cryptek is toughness 5, so it's double, so that means he can wound on a 2+. So he wounds on a 4. Now the armor penetration of this is -4. Now the Cryptek has a 3+ save, so you modify the save, you add 4 to it, so it'll be basically +7. So on a D6 you can't get a +7, but this Cryptek has a chronometron, which gives him a 5+ invulnerable save. Okay, and what a 5+, an invulnerable save is a save that's not modified by armor penetration. So basically it means that up to a 5+, armor penetration up to a 5+, once it gets to more than a 5+, it's just always a 5+ because of invulnerable save. So the Cryptek will try and save, and he rolls a 5. So he actually saved that big laser destroyer shot with his invulnerable save, his chronometron shield, which would have been very, very good for the Cryptek. So the armor penetration, so for instance, if the Repulsor was shooting at, say, something, if the Cryptek didn't have the chronometron, then that -4 would have gone straight through, and the Cryptek wouldn't have even had a chance to roll a dice to get a save. He would have taken the damage, and the damage would have been D6, so it would have been 5 wounds. Very, very bad. I think the Cryptek might have even been dead after that. So yeah, just shows you how much the invulnerable save can really, really help. I hope you enjoyed that look at the psychic phase and the shooting phase. And our next video is going to be on the charge and the fight phase. So look out for that one, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay lucky. Thanks. Bye.